It's Billy. Right now. Yo, what if I got attacked by the clones? What if the builder think they found a better stone? What if the beat don't match with the metronome? What if that means you walk your path alone? Call me a vagabond. If all these streets leading to Rome, then wherever I lay is my home. It's Brooklyn, boy strong. I manifest, I'm in the zone. Y'all silly better back up off my throne. Listen, boy nice, better give him his propers. How we come out sane from all the mosh pits. How we found the key to the game without a locksmith. How we seem to manage these lames is so obnoxious. He let it flow from the brain, trusting the process. A vet journeyman on multiple rosters. If I want it, I go out and get it and cop it. A monster with limitless options. Man, like goddamn, y'all gon' soon figure out who I am. We stay cooking, y'all used to that spam. Western beef, I might square up at the square dance. Look, I change plans, not even a southpaw, I'm an outlaw with a rare stance. Your crew never had a fair chance.
Why's that?
I kill a whole bear with my bare hands. Oh, they studied the dark? Well, I was raised in it. Brain shifted, the kid displayed insane physics. Best story never told, and it ain't finished. How we handled the rock, spun and kept the same pivot. I frame different, hot like a flame kitchen. A whole 2 levels out of your range gifted. Catch me on the highway, lane switching. Or right at the top of your bay wish list. It's Billy. Right now.
Yo. What up, y'all? How we doing? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to How Billy Sees It. Today is March 6th, 2023, and it's another episode of How Billy Sees It. This is going to be a good one. Today, I really want to get into a couple of things. I'm going to talk about, primarily like the title says, we want to talk about Fox News. We're going to talk about media, journalism, and a couple of topics broader than that, but are tightly wound and interconnected with that. You know what I mean? And it's going to be a good one. I'm excited for it. I hope you are too. I hope everybody's week is going well. Last week, I was on here and I was saying how I kind of felt a little down. I wasn't in the mood. I almost didn't do the episode, but my wife encouraged me to, and I'm glad she did. I got to, get the habit of being on here regularly, and even on those down days to be able to get on, and, that time I was able to talk about it, and I felt a lot better right after, Engaging with it helped me feel better, so I was glad I was able to do that, and thanks to those who were able to see it from last week. But this week is going to be about Fox News and truth and journalism and a bunch of stuff. It's the start of the month. It's early March, so at the top of every month, my wife and I, we do this thing. We call it a negotiations meeting. We get together for dinner, over a meal. I think this time, for the first time, we did it in the morning for the very first time. We did a breakfast kind of version. Cooked a nice little omelet deal. It got the bacon going and the eggs, and what else do we have? Do we have hash browns on that? I can't remember what we did, but we talked about our how we felt we were doing, how the month of February went, what our goals were as a couple for March. We love negotiations meetings. I look forward to them. They happen 12 times a year, and they're just opportunities for us to reestablish our truths and to reconnect our truths, even though it's expected for us to be truthful and honest and clear with each other all of the time. This is just a time where there's no doubt, you know what I mean? To sit down and actually reestablish the truth. And when I thought about that, it made me laugh a little bit because, I think some people might, I've talked about negotiations meeting with some other people, and they thought it was interesting. Many people find it interesting. And then others, this idea of reestablishing truth seems confusing to some. And it's actually relevant for today. So I just want to say that the confusion around reestablishing truth really comes from a confusion around what truth is, I think. I think we don't have enough clarity and understanding about the complexity of what truth is and how we can ascertain it and what it is. We think we know what truth is. We think we're out here just observing truth and whatever. Yeah, everything that you say truthful things, and that guy over there is saying a truthful thing, and we're saying truthful. And you and your wife love each other, and you know, you do your thing and pay your bills and live your life, and that's truth. But the truth is something a bit more than that. I was actually invited on a podcast on Saturday. So this weekend, I had the pleasure and the privilege of being on the Tune the Fork podcast. You should check that out. Tune the Fork has an Instagram page and a YouTube, and he does some deep conversations with people, and they get to touching on every topic in the book. James, the person behind the podcast, is just a really smart, brilliant dude who has some great insights and a passion for psychology, a black man living in DC. And we were connecting on Instagram, and then we did this in person, and it was a great conversation about truth, about reality, about how we can ascertain it, how we can describe it. We talked about words. We talked about words in depth. We talked about, our understandings and our experiences as black men. And it was pretty powerful. And so the truth is a deeply complicated, layered, interconnected set of truths. Even as I try to describe truth here to you, let's say I tried to describe it, I would have to use some words to describe it. And words limit us. Words are inherently failing us in our capacity to describe truth. There's something about the nature of truth that is, it seems that each of us as sentient living beings, we create truth. We co-create truth. When we collaborate, we create truth. If you go on a date with someone, you might walk away thinking that the date was excellent, and they might think that the date was something less than that. You go to a concert, you might think the concert went wonderfully. The other person thinks the concert went terribly. What was the truth of the concert, right? What about all the other people? Every other person in there has a different experience with the reality of that concert, and we'll come away with a different truth about it, and we'll be able to tell a different story. And how interesting is that if we stop and sit to think about that? So this episode is about Fox News, but it's necessarily about news and about journalism, which is then necessarily about truth and about its complexities. And I think the more we get serious about what truth is and how complex truth is and how creative truth is and can be, the more we get to understand our issues with journalism. Sometimes when I left CNN at the end of 2020 and tried to communicate my understanding of things, especially having just left that institution. And it's been an interesting journey to do that, Here now in March of 2023, I see that there's a big opening, there's a broadened understanding, a broadened discussion about what journalism is, about what the news is. And I want to say that it's all rooted in this challenge about truth, right? Journalism, what's funny, let me go to this real quick. Let me do an inset. I looked up what journalism means, right? So I look up what journalism means, and I go to Google and I get this: the activity or profession of writing for newspapers, magazines, or news websites, or preparing news to be broadcast. So the activity of writing for newspapers. What do journalists do? Journalists research, write, edit, proofread, and file news stories, features, and articles. Their pieces are used on television and radio, or within magazines, journals, and newspapers, and print and online. There's something about these definitions that is so oriented towards the institutions. That's why they have to keep newspapers, print, online. Online wasn't a thing, 20 years ago. So neither was cable television. You're dealing mostly with newspapers and magazines the further you go back. And it's just an orientation towards that, right? That the journalist is someone who works in an institution that produces content of some sort. And they research and write and edit and proofread these things. And note that there's no reference to truth in this. And as I look at the landscape of where we are right now and the challenges we're dealing with in media, the challenges that really no one can dispute. It doesn't matter what your political affiliation or how you identify, left or right, or whatever the category word you prefer to categorize yourself. You understand that there's a problem in the way news is being gathered and disseminated, and that we have a real challenge to overcome here. And I think it's rooted in these poor definitions. And so I wrote something on my website, BillyBunton.com. I wrote something, what is a journalist? And I want to propose a different definition. I have a bunch of things in here. You can read that later. But my definition for a journalist is someone who perceives the real world with active intention and then genuinely attempts to share their perceptions with others. Let me zoom that in real quick. I like this definition. And I wonder if you like it. I wonder if you see a way that this definition can be improved. I would like to hear it. I don't think that I'm the arbiter of words and definitions. I want to propose this as a much better definition. This doesn't tie the journalist to some publication or some institution, some accredited news organization or something like this, some corporate entity. A journalist is simply anyone who perceives the real world with active intention. I go forward. Active intention means that the best journalists hone and employ a sharpened skill set for both observation and communication. A capacity for research is valuable, while investigating and direct experience are best. Right? That makes sense. People say that. Even people in the news business say that. People understand that your best stuff comes from either a direct personal experience. You want to have the reporter, the journalist embedded in a situation to have experienced it firsthand, or they're going to interview and try to interview someone as close to the firsthand experience as possible. That's how you get the best information. And why is that? The reason for that is the same thing I said a minute ago about like going to a concert. If I want to understand how good the concert was, I don't want to reference someone who was referencing a previous, like someone who read an article. This person didn't go to the concert. He read an article about the concert. And so I'm asking the person who read the article about the concert. No, find someone who's at the concert. That person gives you the best description. That person has the capacity for the most accurate description. Of course, it's even more complicated than that because, like I said, everyone in that concert will have a different understanding of the concert and a different vocabulary and a different mood and energy and a way of describing, and we'll get a different picture of the concert from each of these people. But the last thing I want to do is to be talking to someone who wasn't at the concert. So a journalist understands this and is a curious person with a probing mind, with a desire to ascertain reality and to share what is true. And so once that person has those attributes, then yeah, let's go back to where's the definition of journalism? Yeah, then now you're talking about which institution, which platforms, what are the vehicles to spread the information that the journalist has learned, And that comes secondary though. Journalism, let me go to the full screen here. Okay. I've talked a lot about media. If you know me, if you follow me on Facebook or on Instagram, if you've known me in real life, you know that media and journalism has been a part of my focus for a long, long time. Way before CNN. I joined CNN in 2015. Prior to that, I had an independent media company with an old friend. And the reason we started that company was because we felt that the mainstream media had huge blind spots, intentional, unintentional blind spots. There were important movements, people, ideas, events that were being left uncovered and slept on and ignored, and that we needed to fill those gaps with our understanding. We're not going to fill every gap. The reality of this is so nutty, but we're going to do what we can to participate, to add to our collective understanding of what is. And so it's deeply important. If it doesn't sound deeply important, then let me ask you, if you're someone who thinks that the Constitution is an important document, the U.S. Constitution has language that explicitly, directly references the value of the free press. Of all the words in that document, if you think that document has any value, then you should ask, why is that? Why does it say Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the press? And it does that. It does that because the press is important and media is important. Our collective understanding is important. The thing about journalism is, and this is why it's nutty, you can't just have these lame definitions that don't include the word truth anywhere in there. Journalism sits at the intersection of so many things. So apart from my media interest, I also have an interest in psychology and philosophy and language and certain other disciplines and things like this. Journalism is all of that. It's at the intersection of what is true. It deals with perception. Something is true, but you have to then perceive it. If you perceive it improperly, then you're messing up one of the things. If you're not good at perceiving, then you're not going to be that great as a journalist. It's also a problem of language. If you're not good at communicating what you perceive, then you're not going to be too great as a journalist, because sharing the information, the experience is a key part, a key component of the role, of the social role, the profession and the social role. Journalism sits at the intersection of all that. If we get down to it, if we get into like perception for real, and we understand we're dealing with physics, the more we understand quantum physics, we're understanding that everything that we perceive is enmeshed with the perceiver. And so I see things, as I described earlier with the concert again. It's not that the concert was a thing, and the truth of the concert must be described by me, and then therefore I will be using my language, the limits of my language, the limits of my understanding. My biases and preferences will all be at play as I describe the concert. And so one of the big problems with the media, and particularly when I was there, CNN, I remember they had a meeting actually where they were, I remember this meeting where they called us in and they were really proud of this new commercial they had with the Apple's joint. You know that commercial with the Apple? It was an award-winning commercial. So simple and so direct, and really, everybody really loved it. Journalism, the way we've talked about journalism up until now, hasn't included this element. We've had different companies, let's just stick with cable news for a moment, who are all competing for the eyeballs of all of us here in this country so that they could translate those into, clicks and advertising dollars. And so each of them is in a race to be the first to say something, and they're each marketing themselves as having the truth, as having objective truth. That's what the whole Apple thing was about. Just the facts, But that wasn't true. That's not how it works. There is no such thing. This concept of objective journalism needs to be challenged, and it's being challenged. I've challenged it many times before, and recently I'm seeing so much more content, so many other people coming out of the woodworks who have been witnessing the same thing and have been trying to sound the alarms about this, that we need to speak differently about this, and that competitive nature, that capitalist competitive nature of the different media organizations who all claim to have access to the truth and to be sharing truth, to be sharing objective truth, that this is all improper. The reality is that the product that we get as the news is a product of a whole line of choices, human choices, and competitive market play and corporate interests, and that is much more important to what is true than what is actually true. And the picture that is formed about the world over a 24-hour news cycle, the thing that is most relevant is not whether something actually happened or blah blah. It's about all those forces at play, and we need to get serious about that. The news is a product. It's a product like cars or furniture or dog food. And in all those cases, any of those products get better with a set of principles, a set of clear principles from the people that play, from the industry, and transparency in the marketplace, right? The car and the furniture, transparency. What telling people, oh, this is what it is. This couch is made of wood and this other fabric, and the pillows are this and that. The dog food, here's the dog food. You can have decent dog food that dogs like, and you can have shitty dog food. So we can't think of the news as some objective truth. It isn't that. It's the collective creation, artistic creation of lots of people making choices, skimming away certain things, choosing to focus, narrowing the conversation down. And once we sort of deal with that truth and allow for that truth and accept that truth, you actually have an opportunity to better understand truth, better understand the product. So again, this goes back to like I said, the negotiations meeting. We have to re-up on our understanding of the truth, because things are always changing. Shiva is always changing. Billy's always changing. Our circumstances are changing, and we want to be aware of ourselves and clear and re-up on truth. We don't want to be in some sort of misapprehension about like what we want. Something we said, I might have said 3 years ago. Oh, we might have a different set of circumstances, and I want to be able to articulate that to her from a place of love, and she wants to be able to do the same thing. And so these all interact. And so I'm going to get back to love, actually, because it's funny how love is a key component even to something like journalism. And how funny that you don't hear that much. But we'll get back to that another time. Let's jump into Fox News real quick, all right? Everybody knows that Fox News is a massive joke and like a comedic entertainment show. The problem is that they masquerade as though they are dealing in reality, like I said a moment ago. They don't do the Apple thing, that was CNN's joint, but Fox does Fair and Balanced. That's how they opened. That's when they first were created, I think in the 80s. That was their first thing, Fair and Balanced, and they've moved on further. They have all these cool slogans that give people the impression that they're watching some professional attempt to ascertain truth without bias. And so they're lying straight away. Again, the sooner we realize this, if you are a consumer of news, anytime a well-spoken man in a suit comes up to you and tells you that he's giving you his unbiased, objective reporting, walk away from that dude. Walk away. Don't say a word. Because he's lying to you straight off the bat. He's speaking to you, he's giving you an untruth right off the bat from the very beginning of the conversation, and you have there's no reason for you to trust anything he might say next, right? Super important. What's the psychology of news? Okay, so let's take a movie like Django Unchained, right? I go to the movies to watch Django Unchained. I want to see Jamie Foxx, an actor. I want to see Christoph Waltz. That dude is a great actor. and they're about to do this whole epic battle, and then he's about to save his girl, and they go and what's the dude's name? DiCaprio, right? Another great actor. I sit down and I'm watching, and I have full awareness that I'm watching a piece of art. No one's lied to me. The theater didn't lie to me. The actors didn't lie to me. I know what I'm watching. So I watch this stuff. I can appreciate this piece of art. And then I walk out without the angst. And I might have some angst. If it's a good piece of art, it might draw me in. But I walk out and I know that the real world outside isn't that. I'm not fearful of having to experience that, the horrors of that art in the real world, because I have this separation in our mind. There's a psychology at play. And it's unfortunate we live in such a space where we allow these companies to play with our psychology and not be clear and honest about the arrangement. It's very important. It actually changes everything. I want to suggest, I want to suggest that Tucker Carlson, Hannity, all these people are actors in the very same way. They're constructing false truths, just like it was in Django. Jamie Foxx was never an enslaved person. They constructed that. Hannity and those guys do the same exact thing, except they put on a suit and a tie and they stand and they little, stars come across the fucking screen, and they got a flag playing in the back and the Capitol, and they tell you that they are interpreting and sharing truth about the world. And so what happens is people believe it. That's the difference. You don't believe stuff when you watch a movie. The fancy slave in Django is named Sheba. Yes, I think, is that right? I forget that. Okay. Sheba says, who gave out the award for CNN? This is an Apple ad. It's one of them ad, competition things they have. It's a big deal to move from an understanding as a viewer, to move from an understanding of, oh, I'm watching a piece of art versus I'm watching the truth. And so journalism has this important, vaunted, not only is it a vaunted and important role that was recognized from the framers of the Constitution, but psychologically, as you sit down and watch, whether you realize it or not, it affects you. It affects your understanding. If someone who is supposedly a journalist tells you something, you internalize it as a truth, and it affects how you understand things. They're giving you language for how to speak. You watch it on Sunday. You watch the Sunday morning, political shows. You go out to work. Obviously, the workplace is different, but you go out to the water cooler now and have conversations, and you find yourself appropriating language that you learned from Chuck Todd and from these guys who are speaking on the television, because they have set you up to say that this is what's real. So it's not a small thing. January 6th is a great example. Those people were running around. Several people were murdered that day. Lots of other people were injured. The Capitol building, a symbol of our democracy, a building that I actually worked in for several years when I first moved out to DC, was attacked, windows broken. Like I said, officers and people injured. You got that video of that girl, Elizabeth from Knoxville, got shot, or what is it? The smoke and tear gas. She's like, it's a revolution. Trump is president. That wouldn't happen if there was some clarity about the artwork that is the news that comes from Fox News. It's very important. It's not a game. And you see these hacks, these people like Hannity, they go back and forth. It's been documented how Hannity, sometimes he's a journalist. When he was early on, when Donald Trump became president and was running, he was being criticized and asked about his very close and chummy relationship with Donald Trump. And he said, I'm not a journalist. That's what he said. In order to get away from that burden, Being a journalist is a privilege and a challenge and a burden. I'm describing to you a difficult circumstance, the truth of this experience. The people who take up that mantle and attempt to ascertain and explain what is true. It's not for play. But we don't have the systems, we don't have the customs, the norms, we don't have the guardrails. We don't have respectful people who respect that station and respect the viewers and respect the democracy. So there's a lawsuit now from Dominion. It's unfortunate because Fox News has been a horrible place, a place where, you know, their job is simply to get ratings and to stoke division. They have a particular angle they want to sell. They're very cozy to the Republican Party. When I say cozy, I mean they're in bed with the Republican Party. That's their party of choice. Whenever there's a presidential candidate, they support the Republican presidential candidate with intention. They're not dealing with truth. If you're a journalist, you don't start from a place of support for a particular party or anything like that, for a particular agenda. You start from a place of truth, and maybe a party might align with that. But we've lost all of that. And we don't have the discourse. We certainly lost it in the industry itself, but we don't have the discourse outside where we can understand that as the viewer. And we have people believing what is partisan, money-grubbing, clickbaity art, believing that is truth. How sinister. One of the difficult things that is happening, and it's happening with greater speed and ferocity and from lots of different places now because each of us have this capacity. Look at me, I'm out here with my camera and my microphone, and I'm going to reach a couple hundred people with this video. We have the ability to reach people, and we're all incentivized. I do want this to reach as many people as possible, this video. I'm incentivized to try to reach audiences, even me. But if you're a big old company and you've got billions and billions at stake, and you have all these advertising connections, and you have the media cycle and the political cycle coming, and every political cycle you get millions in advertising from all these political campaigns. You have a collection of so many bad incentives that warp and contort the truth. Again, even the good journalists who are attempting to ascertain truth, as they do so and they report and they write and they research from within the institution, it is the entire institution at play. What you're reading and what you're watching is not simply a recording of truth. It is all of this stuff. And so in order to get clicks, they manipulate language. They play on perception. I described earlier, truth has something to do with perception. It's a challenge of perception. Journalists are tasked with grappling with their perceptions, grappling with their language and with the language of the audience. And instead of doing this with care and love and intention, these things are manipulated. Our perceptions, our biases are played on. They simplify truth in order to meet their metrics, in order to fit things in 10-minute segments between the commercial breaks. And so you get the worst kind of journalism, if we even call it that. We shouldn't call it journalism. It's a joke. And that's what Fox News is, and they're getting people hurt, and they continue to. So let me come back to this old definition again. This old definition of journalists. Their pieces are used on television, magazine, journals, and newspapers, and print online. This means that Sean Hannity is a journalist right now. By this definition, Sean Hannity, even though he's been exposed and he had to admit under oath that he never once believed that never once believed that the ex-president, twice impeached President Donald Trump, won the last election. He propagated that lie, and he was willing to move with it. because of his connections. And he's still considered a journalist by this definition. And so the definition needs to be updated. The definition needs to be improved. Not just certainly within the industry, but within the broader understanding in the populace. Journalists are people who are interested in truth. Journalists develop and hone a skill set for ascertaining and then describing what is true. And that's very, very important. The failure to understand that creates shitty people. The failure to do that creates shitty people and a shitty society, because what you have are, as I said, the people in play in those companies, their values, their interests, their lack of care. They don't care. They don't care about the people who are watching. Because if you cared, you wouldn't lie to them. You would try to describe truth with some clarity and some intention. Why would you do that? Because the words you use, the angles you take, the time you focus, where you put people's attention affects their behavior. And you want them to be well. You want them to be able to make good choices for themselves. But that's not the intention. That's not the intention of a place like Fox News. The intention of a place like Fox News is first to make money, second to support the Republican Party. And that's it. Period. I have a friend who I haven't spoken to in a minute. It's a friend of a friend, or actually a husband of a friend. When I first left CNN in 2021, we had a conversation over some whiskey, and he was really giving me a lot of compliments. He was really proud of the choice and the decision, and he gave me some compliments. He said, he likes how I see the world, and he's wishing me the best, and good luck with whatever you do next. And what slipped out in that conversation, somewhere in between that, was this idea. He said, man, you're a leader, man. Black people need a leader too, man. Black people haven't had a leader in a while. This is a white guy who said this. And it's like, it's so easy to be looking at some outgroup and asking for there to be a leader, for there to be some change, to have some reforms and improvements here and there. But the question needs to be posed back to him. We need to be posing questions back to ourselves. Where's the leader in his inside group? Where are the white guys who are leading us towards truth, towards a good and better society? Is it Trump? Is it DeSantis, who's trying to burn books and rewrite history to favor, to make it less painful? We're the leaders who can talk about this problem with some serious clarity and effort and come out and be honest. It's insane. I look at even like someone like, this came out the other day. Let me put this up real quick. Howard Kurtz is a
You've been asking what the Dominion voting
is a Fox News anchor, journalist. Some people might consider him to be more of the straight news person. Oh yeah, Hannity's bad, but they also have some straight journalists over there. Here's Howard Kurtz's take on the Dominion case.
Some of you have been asking why I'm not covering the Dominion voting machines lawsuit against Fox involving the unproven claims of election fraud in 2020, and it's absolutely a fair question. I believe I should be covering it. It's a major media story, given my role here at Fox. But the company has decided that as part of the organization being sued, I can't talk about it or write about it, at least for now. I strongly disagree with that decision, but as an employee, I have to abide by it. And if that changes, I'll let you know.
And that's it. And he's good with that. And everybody's good with that. Yeah, Oh, it might as well not talk about. Well, let me tell you what. There's a truth that is at play in the moment about January 6th, about Dominion, about Fox News, about our political system, about our democracy, about media. And Howard Kurtz, very casually, is choosing his personal career over that truth. And so we need a word. We need a different word for him. Again, the new definition of journalist is someone who ascertains reality, has honed the skills to ascertain and then describe that reality, and that's what they do. And they're not beholden to an employer. That's not what makes them a journalist. So it's nutty to me that even, people want to position Mr. Kurtz as a good guy. He clearly has an issue with some of the things that are going on Fox News. He's one of the good ones, quote unquote. Yet, he can just casually recuse himself. Oh, I'm not going to speak on it because I'm an employee. Well, this has jeopardized your position as a journalist. You may be an employee of Fox News, but you're not a journalist until you help us ascertain what is true. Please do that work. Now, I'm going to end this off. Where am I at now on time? It's 8:40. I'm going to end this real quick to kind of wrap up some things and really sort of talk about what I think are ways forward, yo. I've been writing and talking about this stuff for a minute. My website, let's go to that real quick. On my website, I've created alternatives. A lot of people have come to me since I started writing about media and being critical. And again, I was writing about this, over a decade ago. But since leaving CNN, I've had greater insights from inside the organization, from inside the machine. And I've been trying to tell people to move away from that we need to stop watching. And people say, "Yo, Billy, well, what do I do? How do I know what the news is?" And it's a complex question. I tried to talk about that at the top, about what truth is. The news can't be spoken about unless we talk about what truth is. The news is simply a product that is created by people where the goal is for that product to be something we can map onto the truth. It should map on as close and as accurately as possible to the truth. It's not just something someone wrote down. So here's my media center, Billy's Media Center. There's no such thing as objective journalism. I do not look for it in my news. The news sources on this list reflect my personal interests, biases, and perspectives. Okay? For daily news analyses, I have these 6 here. Democracy Now! Has been doing it for so long. They're fantastic. The Real News Network is out here in Baltimore. They do a lot of local stuff and stuff with labor. Very important. Breakthrough News is a bit newer. They're fantastic. Breaking Points has popped off. These are two people who left some of the mainstream circles and have made their own thing. Common Dreams has been around for a long time. This is more written. These are all video, and Common Dreams is more text and written stuff, and they're very important. Black History in the Media. Printing Hate. I had this up for February. I might keep this up for a couple more weeks before I change this up. I always have this featured section here. Very important to understand, again, in the 1920s, in the late 1800s, the heyday of American lynching, let's say, the news media played a massive role in that, in keeping people dumb, keeping people unable to see what is true. What was true? The truth is that the mosaic of people that lived in this country included white and black people and all kinds of other people. Some were brought here against their will. Others were voluntary immigrants. But the newspapers, in pursuit of profit at the time, they advertised upcoming lynchings. They printed the time, dates, and place where mobs would gather. Some white reporters watched, took notes, and wrote riveting accounts of the barbarity of the mobs, documenting the horror of the wounds inflicted with blow-by-blow descriptions of the attacks, as though they were writing about a sporting event. But these reporters often fail to produce good journalism by undertaking the basic job of reporters pursuing tell the truth. So this is the Howard Center for Investigative Journalism. Students did this incredible work called Printing Hate, and they just did a lot of research and found all of these different headlines, and they interviewed survivors and interviewed the descendants of survivors, documenting just how this worked. A lot of the same principles are at play, the stuff I'm talking about, the financial profit, the ability to use and ride on division. This is key for us to understand reality, for us to be able to develop the discernment to watch the news and further grasp what's going on. The people, the white people in 1920, say, received news about barbaric black people. That's what they received as true, and they believed it. And it's horrifying because I looked today, what is it, CPAC just finished their thing, and CPAC had a bunch of clowns, but including this guy Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire. And while today it is not appropriate to speak about black people in this tone and with this kind of violence, it's not appropriate today, and so that's why you don't hear it. What is appropriate, what is being done, is to talk about trans people and the LGBTQ community this way. It's the same thing. It's not an attempt to see and ascertain what is true. It is not an attempt to have a discourse to understand what is true and to see the humanity and the fullness of this experience, and to understand that each of us as sentient beings are a localized interpreter of truth, and that our truths are all valid parts of what make up a collective truth. And that's the premise behind a democracy, is that we don't want some single person with their biases imposing their biases on the rest of us, that we can construct systems to organize ourselves semi-regularly. We have this republic where we vote people in and out and they're accountable to us, and that each of us has an appropriate and fair input into how the thing works. There's a ton of problems. I've spoken about it before. I can talk about it further, but at least that's the premise. At least that's the value. But in this case, and it continues today, we have people masquerading under the guise of journalism, using it when it's beneficial to them, as Fox News is doing, as they try to argue themselves out of the Dominion case. They're journalists. They are bastions of free speech, and they get to say things, and we need to, okay. They want us to believe that free speech is their highest priority, when in fact they're not journalists. They are charlatans and liars and people who are paid to say words. And it's all coming out in the deposition as Sean Hannity proves himself to be a liar. What's his name? Tucker Carlson proves himself to be a liar. Mr. Murdoch himself, the big head honcho over there. It's a mess. It's a mess. And it's rooted again in that definition, the failure to define what we're doing properly. Journalists are interested in truth. They don't just work for organizations like the people who wrote these blow-by-blow events of lynchings back then. Those weren't journalists. A journalist would be instrumental in making sure that doesn't happen. Because why? Because there's a truth at play about the human condition. We got some independent commentary and podcasts, interviews and docu-series. Check this out. This is Tune the Fork. This is what I was on this weekend. Dope interview. Media literacy. This is so huge. Oh, let me update this because that's not... I updated that. 1 second, y'all. All right, there it is. I just found out about this guy, Spencer Snyder. He's fantastic. He's been doing work in this space, talking about Here's his YouTube page. Talking about manufacturing consent, Noam Chomsky, analyzing CNN. He talks here about how the defund the police movement has been misconstrued and sabotaged intentionally by the so-called journalists, even the ones we think are, oh yeah, Fox News is bad. Oh, we got the good ones though over there at MSNBC, right? Nah. He details how they do it. Manipulation of language, as I said. Really clever stuff. Check him out. Let me go back to my full screen real quick. My media page is so clutch. Thank you, baby. Yo, we are all journalists. We are all journalists. As I've described, we have no choice but to be journalists. Every time you describe something and you're sharing a perspective or your truth or describing an experience that you've had or what happened last week or how it was at work, or, you know, we have our different areas of expertise and our different areas of joy. We are all journalists, and sharing the human experience is what we do. And when we do it well, when we hone our ability to perceive and to articulate our perceptions, we create an ecosystem that actually serves humanity rather than an ecosystem that serves a small cabal of liars who are in the corporate media and are making us crazy. How amazing would it be to reorganize and realign ourselves in accordance with each other, in support of each other, you know? Giving ourselves and creating, because we have the technology now through our phones and Instagram and TikTok and all this stuff. Yes, have fun and do the dances and do whatever. And also, we are giving the most in-depth representation of what is ever possible. We can sidestep a lot of this trash. I think that journalism requires, and good journalism, let's say we talk in terms of journalism, not us, right? But good journalism in the news space requires a genuine attempt at even-handedness, right? It's not about having objective news. It's not about claiming to be objective. It's not about claiming, oh, just facts. It is to attempt even-handedness. It is to have some self-awareness. A lot of the journalists and the journalism school preoccupation has to do with the use of language and being even-handed in language and making sure you represent the left and represent both sides, whatever that means. Even that is an absurdity. There isn't both sides. Every event will have a multitude of sides. It isn't both sides. This preoccupation with the binary needs to be jettisoned, and we need to improve our understanding further. It's more complex than that. And so there's an attempt for even-handedness. The other thing journalism school focuses on is the capacity for research. That's super important. The ability to dig deeper in research. But what isn't really focused on and needs a lot of attention, and that we can do better than they do, is self-awareness, transparency, love. So self-awareness, who am I? How am I viewing this thing? You think that you're just describing facts? No, you're not. You're describing your interpretation of facts. And you have limitations on how many characters you can use. You have a deadline. You have certain perspectives. And if you don't understand the limits of your perception, limits of your understanding, you don't understand that there are more questions you could be asking. The questions you ask are your questions. They're inherently subjective. There are other spaces and relevant questions and modes of reasoning and thinking that you haven't explored simply because you're a human, and that's okay. And it's not sufficient to just pretend that away and to say, oh, well, it's objective because I wrote it in in a dispassionate tone. That doesn't do it. That's not objective. That's not what objectivity is. So I want to say a genuine attempt at even-handedness, skills of research, self-awareness. Who am I? What are my biases? Why do I care about this story? Transparency. You know, on after the East Palestine, y'all familiar with the East Palestine, Ohio joint, the railroad and the railroad derailment and the toxins that are now in the water and in the air, and those people are suffering in that part of the country. CNN had a panel discussing the topic, and it came out later that on that panel was a person who was a lobbyist for the railroad. And so you have a panel of 4 or 5 people, and one of them is maybe it wasn't was at one point a lobbyist for that railroad company or for the railroads. And so he takes the position that you would expect him to take. He's coming off kind of light. No, we need to focus on the future, and he's not so into the punitive stuff, and because that is the background information that governs his understanding and his perspective. And so transparency is important there. Not only should he have the self-awareness to understand that maybe he's not equipped to discuss this story from a place of truth, but if you're going to put him on the panel, you have to tell the audience. They have to be made aware. It's like making a cake and there's just a little bit of shit in the cake. You got to tell people there's a little bit of shit in the cake. Oh, well, it's about 97% cake, 3% shit. You got to tell people. And then love, yo. Love. You can't ascertain what is true if you don't love what is true. If you don't care. If you don't care, if you don't have the desire to ascertain what is true, you will settle. You will settle on simple narratives. You will settle on your language. There's something inherently flawed about the corporate media model. The pace and the regularity, the consistent every day, 24 hours. I was in there, the crank of new content all the time. It doesn't give you the capacity to show love to a topic or a subject. And one of the things that pissed me off royally is seeing how the movement for Black Lives or Black Lives Matter or, the movement for abolition or the defund police movement, how the best language, the best discourse around that was subdued. People got more often simple slogans. You got to watch, what's that dude, Morning Joe? MSNBC, by the way, not Fox News. Morning Joe, like, oh, we don't want to defund the police. That's crazy. Defund the police. That's a slogan. That's a title of something. The truth was much deeper. If you go and speak to the people on the ground who were instrumental in organizing what was and what could have been, you realize that you're talking about a deep process and an effort to redistribute funds and to build a society that is sustainable and where police interactions are minimal. It's about funding our schools and funding social programs so that children grow up healthy, in a healthy environment, educated, with access to their own dignity and opportunity so that there are fewer crimes. And it's a big conversation. That's a big boy conversation. It's not a little boy conversation. But the lack of love was evident as the conversation played out on our television screens. It was always a low-res, easy, cheap conversation where they were able to throw out this word and then dismiss that word or that term, defund the police. And that was intentional. And it had to do with a lack of love, if you ask me. as well as a lack of self-awareness, as well as not a genuine attempt. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff at play there. So as I said, the key to getting over some of this is first we have to, if you go to my media page, you'll find people that I find to be much more in tune with that. They're the reasons they're there. They have topics and areas of expertise that they want to share with us. Let me go back to it real quick. Environment, energy, climate. Climate Town is this dude, forget this guy's name. Riley Williams, yo. He just graduated last year from a master's degree in climatology or something. And this is his thing. And he does this on his own time. And he cares passionately about this. There's love involved, which is why you get 22-minute, 30-minute videos describing in depth the truth. He has honed his ability to ascertain what is true and then to articulate it to us. It's a completely different thing. And I believe that the more that we engage that ourselves in our areas of expertise and in our spaces, even as simple as like I said, I wrote an article where I talk about my boy, my friend Kurt Hilton, and he suffered a massive stroke several years ago that left him paralyzed on his left arm. He talks and gives journalism on his Facebook and on his Twitter, journalism about his struggles as a stroke survivor, about stroke warning signs, about overcoming difficulties in therapy, about manhood. He doesn't need to tell me about politics. That's not what the news is. If you think that the news is only about tweets and political machinations, and every 4 years the political, no, it's about what's going on. It's us sharing our truth about this experience, and we're helping each other see what is real and to avoid pitfalls and challenges and to have a better experience. That's what it is. How unfortunate that we have these very well-paid, highly funded, powerful, loud, monstrous companies that are in the middle of our conversation, making it more difficult for us to speak to one another, making it more difficult for us to understand one another. How unfortunate that the definitions we had for what a journalist is and what journalism is so oriented towards those companies that the definition says that all it means is to be employed by that person is journalism. And so it's difficult to challenge it. That's our social definitions, and it seems our legal definitions are warped improperly this way, making it difficult for us to talk to each other, stunting our growth as a society, as humans, as we co-create. It's unfortunate, but I'm glad we're pushing through it. We're learning. We're getting better. As you can see, my categories here are interesting. I chose different. These are interviews, docuseries, media literacy here for these guys. Check them out. Environment, energy, climate, humans sharing experience. I put myself here, and I put my lovely wife Sheba here. Soft White Underbelly. Check that out. I Am Perspective is an awesome organization. Timothy Ward, this guy is just an interesting guy who he gets on and he does gig work and travels the world, and he's kind of a nomad. He talks about how that works for him. Invisible People focuses on the homeless. Philosophy and thinking. This is major key. You'll get from here greater capacity to understand self. And the way it works, man, the more you understand self, the more you understand the world. And the more you understand self, the more you understand the external world. The more we engage with ourselves as journalists, the more we develop the capacity and the discernment to see who's a non-journalist, who's the actors. You see how frequently they attempt to just enrage us and to reinforce these old, horrible divisions. rather than to have us come into our power as co-creators, as partners, as humans on this planet and on this project called the United States of America. Mental and physical wellness is another category. Bo, very talented doctor, physiology, knows his stuff. Nedra is a psychiatrist, I believe. Therapy in a nutshell. Check these out. And then I have playlists, about mainstream media, history of news media, super good stuff. What is propaganda? Love and community, and fuck your mind. This is good stuff here. This is all some deeply interesting stuff, so check that out. I'm gonna wrap it up, y'all. But yeah, Fox News is a bunch of shameless, scummy liars. And their example and their success has, and their ability to operate in our world because of our unfortunate definitions socially and legally have inspired other people. So even as Fox News and cable news seems to be on the decline, we have now like Daily Wire. And I think I mentioned Michael Knowles earlier. He's a buddy of Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh and those clowns. And they're writing the same thing, man. In order to create the Daily Wire, in order to grow the Daily Wire quickly, they employed some of the best, and when I say best, I mean successful, but scummy, terrible, morally repugnant techniques for growth in this space, which is to exploit old divisions, old definitions, to confuse. They pick their demographic. For them, it's white men. And they sell them constantly a story about the walls closing in on them, about the brown people, about the gay people, about those crazy women. And they get their clicks, and they get their subscribers, and they get access to the political parties, and they get on Fox News every now and then their Twitter blows up, and then they sell books. It's a very successful model, but it is deeply immoral. And Michael Knowles gets up now at CPAC and says that he wishes to eradicate transgenderism, is what he said. And he uses his words carefully. He knows that use of such a word, that what that means and how horrendous that is. But Michael Knowles is an actor. Ben Shapiro is an entertainer. These are not truth tellers. These are not journalists. And we can keep getting better at understanding that and getting these differences and being ourselves, like stepping into those roles ourselves. Okay, I'm encouraged by it. I'm excited by it. It's going to be a great year, y'all. I love you very much, everybody that showed up and watched this, yo. Thanks very much. I'm going to jump off. Next week, I'm very excited. I'm going to be on with Jay Julian. We're going to talk about love. Jay Julian is a dude I found on Facebook. He posts frequently about love as a black man, and he talks about relationships and dating and notions of love. And I have a whole video about love, and I'm really interested in that conversation. It's going to be great. Make sure you check out on Friday. My wife, Sheba's going to be doing her show, Black Bunny Hole. She just does a deep dive on Google on different people. Last week, she did Beyonce. It was pretty funny. It was very funny. Check it out. This week, I have two people I think she might do. I don't want to say which one because I don't know which one she's going to pick, but it's going to be fun. And then she's on for Sheba Sunday as well. Yo, it's about love, and it's about community, and it's about honesty and empathy. And thanks for watching. Have a good night. I'm going to leave you out with my new song too, y'all. All right? Here we go. Honesty and empathy, yo. Peace.
Hello, sentient. Did you catch the message I sent? It's like a sixth sense. You seem tense when life feels immense. My sentiment is meant to calm your defense. It's senseless, we know they lying. My 2 cents, we're too desensitized to the violence. The blueprint, reconnect with what's inside us. The loose ends fall off with realignment. They call it science. We walk in silence, traversing puppets and tyrants. We choose light over violence, but don't try us. It's high risk, confusing weakness with my kindness. We catch the signs, blare the sirens. We non-compliant. Our minds twist from peace to iron fist. For many, low vibes is a form of blindness. We spellbinded by these divine rifts. They call it science. We take a pause, perceive the progress behind us. Perspective is like water to dry lips. Perplexing how we broaden from crisis. Our moments are priceless. Take a look from the third iris. Infinity times 6 where time sits. A scientist fits with double blind slits. The dead cat lives on the other side, kids. They call it science. It's night shift. Signs of high-pitched colors, concepts, and flying squid. I leave my notes on the backs of your eyelids.